Hi everyone, welcome to the Coding Channel. Today is the 7th episode of our Java tutorial series for beginners. And in this episode, we are going to talk about how to use if and else if conditional statements in Java. This and more when we come back. For instance, our first task for this episode is to prompt the user to enter a number between 1 to 7, and then our program will determine and print the weekday. So let's get started. So the first thing, every time I write a Java program, if you are a beginner, is to determine the variables that you're going to use, and then the input statement, and then the process and output. So normally these are the basic division in our program. Okay, so if I'm going to create that kind of program, so I'll start from declaring I need a string variable to store the what to store the output, for example the Monday or Tuesday or Thursday up to Sunday. Okay, and every time you declare a variable, you better put an initial value. For example, if it's a string, so that's a double quote, just like an empty string. Okay, so and then aside from that, I will be asking or prompt the user to enter a number, so I will be store that in an integer variable. So for instance, we have int number. Okay, and then let's say semicolon, or yes. Okay, that's it. So that's an example now of variable declaration. Okay, now input statement. So I will be using number, dialog box or input dialog. So I will store that in a number. So we have a number is equal to. So we all know now, based from our previous episode, that if we're going to use a show input dialog method of JOptionPaint class, every time we type a number in a text box, by default that is a string. So we will be needing an integer that parse int to convert that one. So that is why every time we use the JOptionPaint class, so you often see this code, show input dialog. Okay, and then for example, enter let's say a number. Okay, so let me just put this on the next line. Enter a number, let's say what, 1 to 7. Okay, 1 to 7, and then semicolon. Okay, and don't forget that since we use the JOptionPaint is a class under javax.swing package. So okay, so we've stored that this class using if inside of our package user-defined package episode 7. And then since we use a new class or built-in class under javax.swing, that is a JOptionPaint. So if you're using Eclipse, all you need to do every time you use a class which not part of the default package, all you need to do is just hover and then select the package name there. Okay, that's it. That's how simple it is. So we've used this one, show input dialog, and then now we convert, and then before we assign. Okay, so we run. So here's now the example of our initial run. Okay, so nothing happens because we need to put some codes in the process. Okay, but actually there is what happened to our code now. Once the user have entered 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 7, so we store that inside of the number variable. Okay, now how are we going to determine if the user have entered 1? So we will try to display Monday. Okay, something like that. So we will be using an if statement or conditional statement. So the syntax of if is very simple. If is in lowercase, okay, because Java is case sensitive. Take note of that. And then there's an open and close parenthesis. Inside of this, we will put now the condition. Okay, so for example, if number, so you put the number variable inside of this open and close parenthesis, and then we will be using the equality operator. Okay, we use the double equal sign if we are going to compare two integer. So for example, if number is equal to let's say 1. Okay, so what are we going to do if the user have entered 1? So I will be using now the string output there. Okay, because I want to assign, for example, a Monday, okay, to output variable if the user have entered 1. Okay, because if the Java evaluates the if condition, we will Java will execute this, or Java will assign Monday to output if this condition is true. Otherwise, this one will not be executed, or will not assign Monday to output. Okay, and then if the statement under of this if is only one statement, the curly braces here is not required. Okay, but for instance, if we have another statement here, let's say for example output statement, system.out that print ln for example, and then I'm going to display now the output. Okay, so that's it. So this are now an example of a compound statements, meaning more than one statement. So the curly braces is required. Okay, uh, so that's simple it is. So let's try to run this one first. So enter a number, let's say 1. Okay, so the output now is Monday. If we enter 1, what about if we enter 2? Okay, since we are not done yet, so as expected, okay, there's no output. But it's not a logic error. It's just that there's no output because we don't have any condition yet to be executed if the user have entered 2. Okay, so let's try to continue. Okay, now I will reserve this one after. So I'll try to put this one here in the output statement. Okay, so later let's talk about that. And then since we only have one statement here, so I will just omit this one. Okay, Control C. Okay, let me just copy this one. So what about if it's 2? Okay, I'll copy first. Let me copy this one to save time. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then one more. Okay, 7. Okay, so we have 2. If the user have entered 2, so what does it mean? That is Tuesday. If the user have entered 3, so we will assign Wednesday. Okay, sorry, Wednesday. And then if it is 4, so that is Thursday. Okay, something like that. If it is 5, so that is Friday. If it is 6, so that is Saturday. Okay, sorry. If it is 7, so that is now Sunday. Okay, so that is the process if number 1. Now, let me explain this if condition. Again, if the condition is true, that's the only time that Java will execute whatever statements inside of that if statement. Okay, how can we say that it's a statement? Once you put a semicolon, that's an example of a statement. So we now have one statement. Okay, and again, if we only have one statement inside of our if conditional statement, the curly braces, the left and right curly braces are not required. Okay, now let's try to continue. Okay, so let me now run this one. If the user have entered 3, for example, so the output is Wednesday. Okay, if the user again have entered let's say 7, so the output is Sunday, because we have an output statement over here. Okay, so let's try to add another output statement so we can actually combine. Okay, just for you to review. So if you want to use the message dialog, so all you need to do is just type the J option pane dot show message dialog, and then the first argument should always be null, and then the output, for example. Or if you want to add a string, for example, that day is Okay, okay, for example, is, and then double quote, and then string concatenation operator, and then the output. So it means that that day is, let's say, Sunday. Okay, the same thing here. So that day is plus. Okay, same. Sunday. Okay. Or if you want to include the user input, so for example, 1 is Monday, 2 is Tuesday. So we can actually incorporate that one here. So just use the number since we store the user input inside of the number variable, and then plus. So number is, let's say 1 is Monday. Okay, so we can say 1 is Monday. Okay, something like that. So one is Monday. Also, we can use that one here. Okay, but let's just use that day is, for example, plus output inside of the message dialog. So let's try to run. Okay, so enter a number 127. So for example, again 6. Okay, so 6 is Saturday using system.out.println, and then since we use the show message dialog, we now have that day is Saturday. Okay, so that's it. Let me explain this one. If we are going to use if statements in this example, if the user, if the, for example, if the user have entered 1, so this one will be executed. Okay, now, but the problem with this type of logic of if you're going to use if statements alone, okay, if this condition is true, Java will still continue to test the other succeeding if statements. For example, it will still test if the value of a number is 2, okay? If the value of number is 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, meaning Java will test all of the if statements even if the first if statement is already true. Okay, so what does it mean now? It seems that the program execution is a little bit slower, okay? Because Java will need to test all of this. So what if you have a hundred or thousands of if statements inside of your program? Okay, so Java will execute all the lines of codes in your if statements. Okay, is there a way for us to somehow what I want to explain is that if the first condition is already true, okay, so meaning the rest is already false, right? No need to test. Okay, so Java has another conditional statement to solve this kind of problem. Actually, it's not really a problem, but if you want to have a more efficient code, so we will be needing another conditional statement, and that statement is by using the if else if condition. So let me just copy this one just for us to have to save time, since you know this already. Okay, and then I will just copy and paste it here. Okay, and we will modify. Okay, now what are we going to do with this? Okay, so I want to use the if-else condition. How are we going to do that? Instead of using only if statements, okay, we can actually use else if here. Else space if. Okay, then else if. So all we will just add else here. Space. Okay. The output is still the same, but we save now the execution time. Okay, why? For example, if the user have entered 1 using if else if the user have entered 1, okay, so we will test Java will test this one, and this one is true. So we Java assign Monday now to output, and then we display something like that. Okay. Now, Java, once the first if is already true, Java will no longer test the succeeding else if statements. But if, for example, the user have entered 2, okay, so Java will test the first condition. So since a number is not equal to 1, so Java will not execute the statement inside of this if statement. So what? So the next step is to test another else if that we have provided here. So else if number is equal to 2, so that is now the time that Java will execute this. As long as now this condition is true. Okay. Now, once there is one true in this if else if conditions, okay. So once this condition now is true, Java will no longer test the other succeeding code unless the user have entered 7. If the user have entered 7, so Java will start executing, testing the first condition. Is this condition true? False. Okay, next. Else if number is equal to 2, no. Is equal to 3, no. 4, 5, 6. Okay, and then 7, the last one is 7. So in that case, Java will test 7 times, but will only execute one statement, which that statement if the condition is true. In this case, so for example, if the user have entered 7, so of course, it will execute this statement. And the answer is Sunday. Okay, let's try to run again using if, else, if. So we have now 7. The output is still the same, but the execution time is much, lesser, shorter compared to just using an all if statements, wherein Java will need to test every if conditions, even if we already have one condition which is already true. Okay, so I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Okay, now, what if, let's try to run again. So what if the user have entered 8, which is not part of our if, else, if condition. Okay, what do you think will happen? Okay, 8 is blank. Today is blank. So there's no uh, output. I mean, there's no value in the output because we don't have a condition that will satisfy the value 8. Okay, now so what are we going to do with that? So let me just copy this one and we will try to modify this one. Okay, is there a way for that particular case? Yes. Okay, and that is by using if, else, if, and then else. Okay. So meaning we will just have to put else here at the end of our if, else, if condition. So else, okay, without condition. So it's like you're giving your program name is flexible, that if the user have entered numbers out of this range, okay, for example any number than 1 to 7, so the Java will execute the else statement. Okay, so for example that is or should I say invalid input. So invalid input. Okay, or we will just for example, or yeah, yes, I'll just have to use some output here, and then so 8 is what is invalid input, something like that. So that day is invalid input. Okay, so let's try. Okay. We forgot to add equal sign. Let's try again to run. Okay, we have now 8. Enter. Okay, 8 is invalid input. That day is invalid input. Okay, so at least we now have an output, even if the user failed to enter the correct input. So that's the use of else. Let us try now another conditional operator. Aside from double equal sign here for equality, okay, we can use other conditional operator. Okay, let me give you another example. For instance, we have number 1 here, and then the value is 5, and then another uh, assignment statement, int number equals let's say 4. Okay, and then we we will compare now number 1 to number 2. If number 1 is less than number 2, so we will just display the word number 1 is less than number 2. Okay, and so on. So let's try to use. So if number 1, okay, the less than sign is this one. So this is an example of another example of conditional operator, which means less than. Okay, so if number is less than number 1 is less than number 2, so what are we going to do? Number 2, what are we going to do? Okay, so for example, we will try to what? Let's try to use another string output here. Okay, actually we can just use an output statement here directly, but instead of having so many output statements, I just want to have one output statements only. Okay, so that is a good programming practice. So string output, okay, I just have to use an empty string as an initial value. And then, so the output here is what? If number is less than number 2, so we will just try to have a number 1, okay, and then is less than plus number 2. Okay, so that's it. Number 1, I'm sorry. Okay, common programming error. Normally, we forgot to put the plus operator, the string concatenation operator. So it's a variable plus the string plus another integer variable. Okay, so don't forget to use the double plus sign there. Okay, so let's continue. Another conditional operator. Okay, so let me use, for example, if here. Another if. Let's try to use if first. Okay. So if there is a less than, so there is also a greater than. So something like that. So if number 1 is greater than number 2, so we will just display number 1 is greater than number 2. Okay. Another. Let me copy this one. Okay. So what else? If number 1, for example, is greater than or equal. Okay, so that's another operator, meaning greater than or equal. Okay, greater than or equal. So this one, we will execute this if greater than. Let's say, for example, 5 and 5. So 5 is greater than or equal. So it's still equal. So this one is still correct. This one will, Java will still execute this code. So let's try. Is a greater than or equal. Right? Or equal. Okay, next. Another if statements. If a number 1 is what? We have greater than, so we have less than. Less than or equal. Okay, so that's example of an operator. Less than or equal. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Let's try to add here the double equal sign. So is equal. Okay, so that's it. Is equal. And then if there's an equality, there is also a not equal. Not equal. Not equal. So is a not equal. Is not equal. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, we'll use a 6 here. So these are the basic conditional operators available in Java. The less than, the greater than or equal, less than or equal, or is equal or is not equal. Okay, so it could be better if we use put another system dot out here. Okay, let's try to make a compound statement. So system dot out dot print. So I'll just have to use it here. Why I decided that one? Because there is a possibility that what I'm trying to say is that there's a possibility that one or two or three if statements here can be true. Okay, so better to put the output statements inside of each if statement. So if that is correct, so what are we going to do? We will just display output. Okay, something like that. Okay, so we just have to copy this one. Before that, don't forget, since we now have more than one statement, the curly braces now is required. Okay, so I just have to copy this one, put it there. Okay, just have to put another if statements there. Okay, and then another curly braces there, and then output again. Okay, if you have questions, don't hesitate to drop your questions or clarifications in the comment section, as I'm always saying. Okay, so let's try one more, two more. I have here the output. Okay, sorry. Okay, okay, there you go. So let's try. If the since we have now 5 and 4, so is 5 greater is less than 4? False. So this one will not be executed. So let's try. Okay. So there are three if statements. The first one is 5 is greater than 4. 5 is greater than 4. So this one has been executed. Okay, let's try. The greater than, and then 5 is greater than or equal. So this one is also true. Okay, based on our input. And then 5 is not equal 4. Yes, that's true. 5 is not equal 4. It's not equal to 4. It's not equal to. It's equal to. Okay, something like that is equal to. Let's try to add. Okay, is less than or equal to. Sorry, 2, and then you just have to put 2 there. Is less than, is greater than. Okay, so let's try to for example 3 and 4. Okay, so the output is 3 is less than 4, 3 is less than or equal to 4, and then 3 is not equal to 4. Okay, that's it. What else? What about if the initial value are both 3, for example? The only output is what? Oh, we have 3 is greater than or equals because of equal. Okay, so either greater or equal. So this one, the statement is still true. Still true, this one. Okay, 3 is less than or equal to 3. Yes, because of the equal sign there. And 3 is equal to 3. Okay, so that's it. Okay, let's try another example. What if we are going to prompt the user to enter 3 numbers, and then our program will determine the largest of 3 numbers. Okay, so this is the first way of solving the problem. So we will still use the if statement. So for instance, I have here the input statements already, and then I declare the variables int number 1, number 2, number 3, and the largest, and then I initialize it to 0. Okay, because I want so that if, for example, if the if condition is true, so I will just assign that number to largest, and we'll display that later. Okay, so let's start. If number 1, okay, if number 1 is greater than number 2. Okay, So this time, I will show you the example of a nested if. Okay, so what is a nested if? It's an if within an if statement. So meaning after this condition, if number 1 is greater than number 2, okay, we're not done yet. Okay, we need to test another condition. So that's the time that we will have a nested if. There is an if condition inside of an if. So if this condition is true, okay, Java will still execute another condition before assigning or before printing or whatever statement inside of that if statement. So in this case, we will also compare number 1 to another number, which is number 3. Okay, so if number 1 is greater than number 3. Okay, so that is the logic now. So if number 1 is greater than number 2 and number 3, okay, that's the meaning of this if and if statements. So the nested if. So what we're going to do is assign to largest variable the number 1. Okay, so that's one way of solving that. Again, we're not done yet. So we will have another if statements. So let me just copy this one to save time. Okay, so another. What if the number 2 is greater than number 1 and number 3? So if number 2 is greater than number 1, and then we need to test again if number 2 is greater than number 3. So that's the time that we can say that number 2 is the largest among the 3. Okay, another. Or what if the largest is 3? So because there are 3 instances, okay, or possible answer. It's either the number 1 is the largest, or the number 2 is the largest, and the number 3 is the largest, right? So if number 3 is greater than number 2, and number 3, okay, number 3 is greater than number 1. Okay, so largest is equal to number 3. Okay, so we now have the condition. We satisfy the condition if number 1 is the largest among the 3. So we have an assignment statement for that. We also have an assignment statement assigning number 2 to largest if number 2 is greater than number 1 and number 3. And also if number 3 is greater than number 2 and number 1, so we assign number 3 to largest. And that's the only time that we display now the output. So system .out .print. Okay. Now, what if I want to show the numbers? Okay, so for example, you can say that for numbers what? Okay, assignment statement for numbers. Number 1 plus, for example, space, and then a number 2 plus another space here, and then another plus number 3 plus double quote here, and then let me just press the enter key, and then I just add another here. Okay, so for numbers, let's say 5, 4, 6. Okay, 5, 4, 6. So in between, I just put the space or the empty string so that we have a space there. Plus, so here's now the output. The largest is plus largest, because in largest a variable where we store the either number 1 or number 2 or number 3. Okay, so let's try to. So this is an example now of the nested if. So let's try. Okay, so for example, enter number 1. We have 5, and then 4, and then 6. Okay, so for numbers 5, 4, 6, the largest is 6. Let's try another. Okay, what if the largest is number 1? So we have now 6, 5, and then 4. Okay, 6, 5, 4, the largest is still 6. Okay, what if we put a 6 in number 2? So we have, for example, 4, 6, and then 5. 4, 6, 5, the largest is still 6. Okay, so this is one way of solving the largest of 3 numbers. Okay, now let me show you another example without using a nested if, for example. Okay, so let me just create another file here. For example, this one is using what? Using if, else, and then if, for example. Then this one, or if else. Okay, and then using if, else, if two. Okay. Okay, let's try another. Let me just copy this one. Okay, to speed up the first to save the time. Okay, so I'll show you another way of doing this. Okay, so I will not. Okay, after we compare if number one is greater than number two, so I will not use the if statement here. Okay, and I will use if to else. Okay, and say, so if number one is greater than number two, if not, so we will execute this one. If number one is greater than number two, so largest is equal to number one, else largest is equal to number two, right? Okay, and then I'll just have to delete this one. What about number three? If number one is greater than number two, so we trap if the meaning if there's an instance that the number one is the largest, so we already assigned that one. If number two is the largest, so we also assign number two to largest. Okay, and then this is an example of an if else, and then we can also mix the another if here. Okay, now we will compare if what? If largest so far, right? So whichever is true here, or whichever Java has been executed, either this one or this one, the if or the else. So we will compare that one, either the number one or number two, so inside of the largest, right? So if largest is greater sorry, if number three, okay, is a greater than largest so far. Okay, that's what I mean. So largest is equal to number three. Okay, so that's it. And then we still have this output. Okay, so let's try this logic. So yeah, at least I'm presenting you now different options. So because let me finish this first. So 5, 4, and then 6. So 5, 4, 6. The largest is 6. Okay, let's try another combination. For example, 6, 4, 5. 6, 4, 6. Sorry, still 6. Okay, 6, 4, 5. For example, 6, 4, and then 5. Okay, 6, 4, 5. The largest is 6. Okay, so still this one is still correct. But if you're going to compare using this one, okay, this one is a bit slower again because Java will test each if statements here. Okay, so unlike this one, if this condition is true, the else will not be executed. Okay, so because we have an if else and then another if. Okay, and then another way is by using logical operator. So let me create another file here. For example, logical operator, logical and. Okay, there you go. So I will copy this one because my code is somehow similar to this one. Okay, for you to know the logical and operator. Okay, so instead of using the nested if, okay, so I will add this one here. Okay, and then I will use the logical and operator. Okay, if we use that one, okay, meaning Java will now compare these two. Okay, so to satisfy this condition, or this condition will be true if the number 1 is greater than number 2. So if this condition is true, okay, and another condition, number 1 is greater than number 3, if this condition is also true, so that's the only time this whole condition using logical AND is true. Okay, meaning if both uh, if this first comparison, if the result is true and this one is another true, so true plus true, true and true, the answer is true. So Java will execute this statement. Okay, so that's the use of a logical AND operator. Okay, so we will not use the nested if. So this one is another way. So you have a lot of options. Okay, so I just have to use AND, and then so that. Okay, so if number 2 is greater than number 1, so again, if this one is true, and number 2 is greater than number 3, so Java will execute this one. So I'll just remove the curly braces there since we only have one statement. Okay, another and, for example, and number 3, if number 3 is greater than number 2 and number 3 is greater than number 1, so largest equals number 3. Okay, so this one is another way of solving the largest of 3 numbers using 3 if statements, but this time with logical operator AND. Okay, so if you're going to run again, oh, there's an error. Okay, what's the error? Okay, the error is we have more than 1. Okay, the curly braces. Okay, let's try to run. So enter number 5, 4, and then 6. So for numbers 5, 4, 6 still, the largest is 6. Okay, another. We have 6, 5, and then 4. 6, 5, 4, still the largest is 6. Okay, so you have a lot of options now. Either you use this type of logic using logical AND, or you combine the if else with if, or you use the nested if statements. So these three can still solve the largest of 3 numbers problem. But if you're going to ask me which of these 3 examples are the fastest when it comes to the execution, of course, the fastest way is this one, because Java will just either choose which one is satisfy the condition. So either if this condition is true, Java will not execute this one, and will just only compare another if here. Unlike in our nested if, Java will test all the nested if, even if the first if and if condition is already true. Okay, and also in using the logical AND, so almost the same with this one. Okay, since we used 3 if statements here, so Java will still test the 2 remaining if statements even if the first if condition is already true. Or at least you have a lot of options here. Okay, whichever of these 3 examples that I presented to you is, you can choose which one is okay to you. Okay, now another I just want to include here before we end the logical OR. Okay, so this is an example of a logical OR. The only difference is that using OR, meaning if only one statement or condition or comparison here, or yes, condition is true, the whole statement will become true. For example, this one, if number 1 is greater than number 2, okay, true, and then number 1 is greater than number 3, for example, this one is false. So this if is still true because we use the OR. Okay, we just need need one true, okay, to make this condition true. Unlike with AND, okay, we need a two true. So this one must be true, and also this condition is also true to have a uh, true for this if condition. Okay, so in other words, true and true, so the result is true. Using or, true plus false, the result is still true. Okay, unless if both conditions are false, so that's the only time that this condition will become false. Okay, so that's the logical or and a logical and operator. Okay, another example. What if we want to compare two strings? Okay, so it is the last example in this episode. For example, we have a string. What? Let's say string A is equal to. Let's say we have hello. Okay, and then we have another string here, B. For example, hi. Okay. Now, how are you going to compare strings? Okay. Um, if you think that we can compare strings using the equality operator, so we'll see if you can compare the strings by using this one. Okay, and then for example, we just have to put here system.out.print ln. Okay, for example, a plus a is what? Is equal to b. Okay, something like that. So this one is a string 2 space plus b. Okay, this one. So a is equal to b. Is a equal b? Is equal to b. Okay, let's try to run. Again, let's try to run. What is the output? See, we don't have an output here. Why? Because we cannot compare two string. This one is a logical error by using the equal sign. So we use the double equal sign if we compare two integers. But if you're going to compare strings, so this one is not applicable. Instead, we will be using the equals method, okay, of a string class. So if A, let's say hello, that equals B, which is hi. So if A is equal to B, take note, using equals is a case sensitive. Okay, so let's try. What do you think is the output? Is A, okay, why we don't have an output? Okay, yes, we don't have an output. It's because A isn't equal to B, right? But if we change this B, for example, hello, hello, okay, and then you run, the output is hello is equal to hello. Okay, but for example, if we have capital H here, A, okay, let me see. Okay, we don't have an output now. It's because this if statement is false. Okay, it's because we use the equals method. Now, if you want to use a method case sensitive, okay, use the equals ignore case. Right. Okay, use equals ignore case. So this time, hello with a capital H and hello all in lowercase are now equal. So hello is equal to hello. Okay, as simple as that. So that's how we compare two strings. So to wrap up this episode, you've learned how to use if, and then if else if, and then using nested if, and then also the conditional operator, the less than sign, the equality operator, the not equal, for example, the greater than or equal, less than or equal. Okay, and then with the logical or and logical and I presented you the different ways on how to solve the largest of three numbers using if and on how to compare two strings. So these are the source code for this episode. And that's all for today. And if you like this video, please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And as always, show your love through comments and favorites. God bless and thank you for watching.